Captain Kai Thorne stood at attention in the sterile conference room of Terra Station, his dress uniform crisp, despite the weight of exhaustion that had settled into his bones over the past 3 years of war. His green eyes, made sharper by the thin scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, remained fixed on the viewport, showing the vast emptiness of space beyond. Somewhere out there, Xerian ships waited in formation, no longer enemies, but not yet allies. Captain Thorne. Admiral Morrison's voice cut through his thoughts like a blade. You understand what's being asked of you? Kai turned, his hands clasped behind his back in perfect military posture. With respect, sir, I understand. What's being demanded of me? The words came out harder than intended, but 3 years of watching good soldiers die had stripped away most of his diplomatic polish. The Admiral's weathered face showed a flicker of sympathy before the mask of authority slid back into place. The Xerian Empire has agreed to our terms. Complete cessation of hostilities, reparations for the colonies they've decimated, and full withdrawal from human space. In exchange, he gestured to the holographic display that flickered to life between them. The image that materialized made Kai's breath catch despite himself. Princess Valara of the Xerian Empire stood in what appeared to be a formal portrait, her blue skin, luminescent under alien lighting. Her hair fell in vibrant red curls around her shoulders, a striking contrast to the silver of her eyes that seemed to look directly through the hologram at him. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way that made his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't name. She specifically requested you, Admiral Morrison continued, studying Kai's reaction. Apparently, your service record impressed their intelligence network. Your actions during the siege of Kepler 7, the way you treated their prisoners with honor even when... He didn't need to finish. They both remembered the aftermath of that battle. Kai's jaw clenched. So I'm to be a peace offering, a show of human submission wrapped in wedding silk. You're to be a bridge between our species, Morrison corrected firmly. This marriage isn't just ceremony, Thorne. According to their customs, it's binding in ways we don't fully understand yet. Their anthropologists spent months explaining their bonding traditions to our diplomats. The hologram shifted, showing Princess Valara in different settings, addressing what appeared to be a Xerian council, walking through elaborate gardens, studying holographic displays of star charts. In each image, those silver eyes held an intensity that made Kai feel exposed, as if she could see through layers of armor and pretense to something deeper. What do we know about her? Kai asked, surprised by the roughness in his own voice. She's their military strategist, brilliant by all accounts. She's the one who convinced their High Council to seek peace rather than continue a war they couldn't win. Morrison paused. She's also refused every suitor her people have presented for the past decade. Until now. The weight of that information settled over Kai like a shroud. Why me? Why now? Before Morrison could answer, the conference room doors slid open with a soft hiss. A group of Xerian delegates entered, their blue skin gleaming under the station's harsh lighting. At their center walked Princess Valara herself, no longer a hologram but flesh and blood, her presence filling the room with an energy that made the air feel charged. She wore simple robes that somehow managed to look both elegant and practical, and her red curls were pulled back in an intricate braid that revealed the graceful line of her neck. When she looked at Kai, her silver eyes seemed to catalog every detail of his appearance, every micro-expression on his face. Captain Thorne, she said, her voice carrying a melodic accent that made his name sound like music. I am honored to finally meet you. Kai found himself straightening even further if that were possible. Your Highness. The words felt strange on his tongue. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see flecks of starlight in her silver irises. I have studied your military records extensively. Your tactical innovations during the war were impressive. But more than that, your compassion toward prisoners, your refusal to target civilian populations even when it would have been strategically advantageous. These things speak to the kind of man you are. I was doing my duty, Kai replied stiffly. A small smile curved her lips, the first genuine expression he'd seen from her. No, Captain, you were being yourself. That is why I chose you. She turned to Admiral Morrison with regal composure. The ceremony will take place in 3 days, as agreed. I trust Captain Thorne will have time to prepare himself for what is to come. Something in her tone made Kai's skin prickle with unease. What exactly am I preparing for? Princess Valara's silver eyes met his again, and this time he saw something deeper there. A mixture of anticipation and something that might have been fear. For everything to change, Captain Thorne, for both of us. As she swept from the room with her retinue, Kai was left staring at the space she'd occupied, her words echoing in his mind. Admiral Morrison clapped him on the shoulder with rough sympathy. 3 days, son. Get your affairs in order. Kai nodded mechanically, but his thoughts were consumed by silver eyes and the unsettling certainty that his life as he knew it was about to end. The wedding ceremony took place in the Grand Temple aboard Harmony Station, a massive neutral facility constructed specifically for this historic occasion. Kai stood at the altar wearing his formal military dress uniform, the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. Representatives from dozens of human colonies filled the ornate seats on one side, while Zyrian nobles in their flowing robes occupied the other. The divide between the species was stark, even in this moment meant to unite them. The temple itself was a marvel of both human and Zyrian architecture. Soaring crystal spires met sleek metal frameworks, creating a space that felt both ancient and futuristic. Holographic displays showed the ceremony being broadcast across both empires, billions of beings watching this pivotal moment in galactic history. Kai's hands remained steady at his sides, but his heart hammered against his ribs. He'd faced plasma fire and enemy cruisers without flinching, yet the thought of what lay ahead made his mouth dry. Admiral Morrison stood as his witness, offering him a reassuring nod, while the Zyrian High Priestess prepared the ancient binding rituals. The great doors opened with a resonant chime, and Princess Valara entered in a procession that took Kai's breath away. She wore ceremonial robes of deep blue that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light, embroidered with silver threads that traced patterns he didn't recognize but somehow found beautiful. Her red curls were woven with crystalline ornaments that caught the temple's light, creating a halo effect around her face. A gossamer veil covered her features, but her silver eyes were visible through the delicate fabric, fixed on his. As she walked down the aisle, Kai noticed something he hadn't expected. She looked as nervous as he felt. There was a slight tremor in her hands, barely perceptible, and her usual confident bearing seemed more fragile somehow. When she reached the altar, she turned to face him, and through the veil he caught a glimpse of vulnerability that made his chest tighten. The High Priestess began the ceremony in ancient Zyrian, her voice echoing through the vast space. Translation. Devices provided a running commentary for the human guests, but the words felt hollow and mechanical, compared to the melodic flow of the original language. Kai found himself watching Valara's lips move as she repeated the ritual phrases, wondering what they truly meant to her people. Do you, Kai Thorne of Terra, accept the sacred bond that transcends flesh and spirit? The translator intoned as the High Priestess spoke. I do, Kai replied, his voice carrying clearly through the temple despite the uncertainty in his heart. Do you, Valara Jean of Zyria Prime, accept the sacred bond that transcends flesh and spirit? I do, she answered, and even through the translator, her voice carried a weight of meaning that made Kai's skin prickle. The binding ritual began with the joining of hands. As the High Priestess wrapped their wrists with ceremonial cords, Kai felt a strange warmth spread from where his skin touched Valara's. Her fingers were delicate but strong, and when she squeezed his hand gently, he glimpsed something in her eyes that made his pulse quicken. Not fear or duty, but something deeper and more complex. For a brief moment, the sounds of the ceremony faded, and Kai felt as if he could sense emotions that weren't his own. Loneliness, determination, and underneath it all, a profound hope that made his throat tighten. He blinked, and the sensation passed, leaving him wondering if he'd imagined it. The High Priestess continued the ritual, presenting them with the chalice of unity, a crystalline vessel filled with liquid that sparkled like liquid starlight. They drank from it in turn, and Kai tasted something sweet and otherworldly that seemed to warm him from within. "The bond is sealed," the high priestess declared, and the temple erupted in carefully orchestrated applause from both sides. The reception that followed was a masterpiece of diplomatic choreography. Human champagne flowed alongside Xyrian nectar wines, and the conversations were stilted affairs conducted through translators and careful protocol. Kai found himself shuttled from one group of dignitaries to another, receiving congratulations that felt more like condolences and answering questions about his sacrifice for peace. Valara moved through her own reception line with practiced grace, but Kai noticed how she seemed to withdraw into herself as the evening progressed. Her responses became more formal, her smile more distant. Only once did their eyes meet across the crowded hall, and in that moment he saw the same trapped feeling he recognized in himself. The speeches began after the dinner courses were cleared. Admiral Morrison spoke of the new era of peace, while the Xyrian ambassador discussed the joining of two great civilizations. Every word felt scripted, sanitized of any real emotion or meaning. Kai sat at the head table, his new wife beside him, feeling like an actor in someone else's play. As the evening wore on, he became increasingly aware of Valara's presence beside him. The way she held herself with perfect posture despite what must have been exhaustion, the subtle way she monitored the room for potential threats or diplomatic incidents, the careful way she ate unfamiliar human foods without showing any distaste. She was performing her role flawlessly, but he could sense the effort it required. When a Xyrian elder made a toast about the sacred nature of their union, Valara's hand tightened almost imperceptibly around her glass. Kai found himself leaning, slightly toward her, close enough to catch the subtle scent of whatever oil she wore, something floral and exotic that made him think of alien gardens under foreign stars. "Are you all right?" he whispered, the first private words they'd exchanged all evening. She turned to look at him, and for a moment her careful mask slipped. "This is not how I imagined my bonding ceremony would be," she admitted quietly. "So many eyes, so much performance. What did you imagine?" he asked, surprised by his own curiosity. A genuine smile ghosted across her lips. "Something real." Before he could respond, another dignitary approached their table, and the moment was lost in another round of formal congratulations and diplomatic pleasantries. As the reception finally wound down, Kai felt a growing sense of dread. The public ceremony was over, but now came the private reality of what they'd committed to. He was married to an alien princess he barely knew, bound by treaties and traditions he didn't understand. When the last guest departed and the temple began to empty, Valara stood with fluid grace. "Shall we retire to our quarters, husband?" The formal title sounded strange from her lips, but there was something in her tone that made his heart skip. As they walked side by side through the station's corridors toward their shared accommodations, Kai realized that everything that had happened today had been for others. For peace, for politics, for the cameras broadcasting to billions. But now, finally, it would be just the two of them. He had no idea what to expect, but he suspected his new wife was about to surprise him once again. Their shared quarters were a study in diplomatic compromise, half human efficiency, half Xyrian elegance. Soft lighting cast a warm glow over furniture that blended angular human design with the flowing curves favored by her people. A large viewport showed the stars beyond, and Kai found himself drawn to it, needing a moment to process the surreal reality of his situation. Behind him, he heard the soft rustle of fabric. When he turned, Valara was removing her elaborate headdress, her red curls cascading freely around her shoulders for the first time since he'd met her. The transformation was startling. She looked younger, more approachable, and somehow more real without the formal regalia. "You're staring," she observed, setting the ornate piece carefully on a side table. Her voice held a note of amusement rather than reproach. "I'm sorry, Kai began, but she held up a hand to stop him. "Don't apologize. I prefer honesty to false courtesy." She began removing her ceremonial jewelry with deliberate, practiced movements. Each piece, the wrist guards, the ceremonial collar, the intricate ear cuffs, was placed with reverent care on the table. May I ask you something, Kai? The use of his first name sent an unexpected warmth through him. Of course. What do you know about Xerian bonding customs? Kai felt heat rise in his cheeks. I was briefed on the basic expectations. The diplomatic corps said that physical intimacy might be expected as part of the alliance, but that the specifics would be negotiated between us privately. Valara's silver eyes met his, and she smiled. Not the careful diplomatic expression she'd worn all day, but something genuine and slightly sad. Your diplomats understand very little about my people. She began unfastening the complex clasps of her ceremonial robe. Among the Xerian, marriage is not a political contract, it is sacred. It is the joining of souls. The outer robe fell away, revealing a simpler undergarment that hugged her blue-skinned form. Kai's mouth went dry, and he forced himself to maintain eye contact. What does that mean exactly? It means that what happens between us tonight is not about duty or diplomacy. It is not about sealing political agreements or producing heirs. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns of darker blue that traced her skin like living artwork. It is about two people choosing to become one consciousness, one heart, one spirit. Kai's heart hammered against his ribs. And if I'm not ready for that, if I don't know how to, then I will teach you. Her hand reached up to touch his face, her fingers cool against his skin. But first, you must understand something. I did not choose you because of your military record, though it is impressive. I did not choose you because of your tactical brilliance, though that drew my attention initially. Then why? His voice came out rougher than intended. Because of who you were during the siege of Kepler 7. When your forces captured the Xerian medical facility, you had a choice. Your commanders wanted to interrogate the wounded, to extract intelligence by any means necessary. Her thumb traced the scar on his temple. But you refused. You ensured they received medical care. You treated them with dignity, even though they were your enemies. Kai remembered that day. The weight of command, the pressure from above, the look of fear in alien eyes that had seemed far too familiar. They were prisoners, wounded. There are rules. There are rules, yes. But there are also choices. And you chose compassion over expedience. She was so close now that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. That is why I chose you, Kai Thorne. Because your soul called to mine across the darkness of war. She began working at the fastenings of his dress uniform jacket, her movements unhurried but purposeful. The bonding requires complete vulnerability, complete trust. We must share not just our bodies, but our memories, our fears, our deepest selves. I don't understand how that's possible, he admitted, even as he helped her remove his jacket. Through touch, through openness, through the willingness to let another see you as you truly are. His jacket fell to the floor, and her hands moved to his shirt. Among my people, we believe that souls recognize each other across lifetimes, across species. The bonding simply awakens what already exists. Kai's breath caught as her fingers brushed his chest. And if my soul doesn't recognize yours, for the first time since they'd been alone, uncertainty flickered in her silver eyes. Then we will have a marriage of convenience, and my people will honor the treaty regardless. But I hope... She paused, her hands stilling on his chest. I hope that is not the case. He covered her hands with his, struck by the vulnerability in her voice. This powerful, brilliant princess was as uncertain as he was, as afraid of rejection, as hopeful for connection. How does the bonding work? Skin-to-skin contact, complete openness. We lie together, and I will guide you into the first joining of minds. Her cheeks darkened with what might have been a blush. It may be overwhelming at first. You will feel my memories as if they were your own, and I will feel yours. But if you trust me, if you don't fight it, it becomes... She searched for words. It becomes beautiful. Kai studied her face, seeing past the alien features to the hope and longing beneath. And after? What happens to us after we're bonded? We become something new, not fully human, not fully Xerian, but something that bridges both. She stepped back and began removing the last of her garments, her movements graceful and unself-conscious. We will feel each other's emotions, share thoughts and dreams. We will be partners in the truest sense. As she stood before him, beautiful and vulnerable in the soft light, Kai felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't the political arrangement he'd dreaded. It was an offer of genuine connection from someone who had chosen him not out of duty but out of hope. "I'm afraid," he admitted, his hands moving to his belt. "So am I," she replied, and her honesty made his heart ache. "But I would rather face that fear with you than face a lifetime alone." As they came together in the soft light of their shared quarters, Kai realized that everything he'd thought he understood about his situation had been wrong. This wasn't a sacrifice. It was a gift. And for the first time since this had all begun, he found himself truly grateful to have been chosen. "Show me," he whispered against her skin, and felt her smile against his shoulder. "Close your eyes," she murmured, "and let me show you what it means to be truly known." As Valara's skin touched his, Kai felt the world shift around him. What began as the simple warmth of her body against his suddenly exploded into something far more profound. Her fingers traced patterns on his chest, and with each touch, reality seemed to blur and expand. "Don't fight it," she whispered, her voice seeming to come from both beside him and within his own mind. "Let me in." The first memory hit him like a wave. Suddenly he was no longer Kai Thorne lying in their quarters. He was Valara, a child of perhaps 10 years old, standing on a crystalline balcony overlooking a city of impossible beauty. Spires of living coral stretched toward violet skies, and the air hummed with the songs of her people. But even in this moment of wonder, there was an undercurrent of sadness, of responsibility pressing down on small shoulders. "I was never just a child," her voice echoed in his mind. "From birth, I was the future of my people." The memory shifted and he experienced her adolescence, endless lessons in statecraft, military strategy, and the ancient arts of diplomacy. He felt her isolation, surrounded by tutors and advisors, but never equals, never friends. The loneliness was a constant ache that she learned to hide behind perfect composure and brilliant intellect. But then came the memories of the war. Kai gasped as he experienced the first human attacks from her perspective, the terror as the orbital defense platforms fell, the sound of her people screaming as plasma fire rained from the sky. He felt her desperate determination as she took command of the military response, her anguish as casualty reports poured in. "We were not prepared for human warfare." Her mental voice was heavy with grief. "My people are builders, dreamers, artists. We had forgotten how to fight." Through her memories, he saw the war through Xerian eyes, not the righteous defense of human colonies that he'd been taught, but a desperate struggle for survival by people who had stumbled into conflict through misunderstanding and pride. He felt her growing realization that victory was impossible, that each battle won by either side was a step closer to mutual annihilation. The most painful memory came last, the night she made the decision to seek peace through marriage. Alone, in her command chamber, surrounded by star charts showing the inexorable advance of human forces, she had wept for the first time since childhood, not from fear, but from the knowledge that she would have to sacrifice her dreams of love, of choice, of a life that was truly her own. "I studied human military records for months," she shared as the memory played out, "looking for someone I could bear to spend my life with. And then I found you." He experienced her watching recordings of his actions during the siege, his careful treatment of prisoners, his refusal to target civilian areas even when it would have been tactically advantageous, the way he'd risked his own career to ensure medical supplies reached Xerian refugees. Through her eyes, he saw himself as she had, not just a competent soldier, but a man whose compassion had survived the brutality of war. As the flow of her memories slowed, Kai felt Valara's consciousness gently probing at the edges of his own mind. "Now let me see you," she whispered, and he found himself unable to resist the tender invasion. His memories poured out in return. His childhood on New Geneva, watching the news reports of the first Syrian attacks with the mixture of fear and excitement only a teenager could feel. She experienced his military training, his rapid promotion through the ranks, the weight of command settling on his shoulders like armor he could never remove. But she lingered longest on the darker memories, the battles where he'd been forced to make impossible choices, the friends he'd lost to Syrian weapons, the nights he'd lain awake wondering if he was becoming the kind of man who could sleep soundly after ordering others to their deaths. She felt his self-doubt, his fear that the war was changing him into something cold and calculating. "You think you lost your humanity in the war?" Her mental voice was gentle, understanding. "But I see the truth. Every difficult choice weighed on you. Every life lost mattered to you. That is not the mark of a monster. It is the mark of a good man carrying an impossible burden." The memory that seemed to affect her most was the one he'd tried hardest to forget, the aftermath of the Kepler 7 siege. A wounded Syrian soldier, barely more than a child, dying in the medical facility. The boy had looked at Kai with eyes full of pain and fear, and in that moment, all the propaganda about inhuman aliens had crumbled. Kai had held the soldier's hand as he died, whispering words of comfort in broken Syrian he'd learned from captured communications. That was when I knew. Valara's consciousness wrapped around his like a warm embrace. That was when I knew you could see past the surface to the soul beneath. As their memories intertwined, something new began to emerge. The boundaries between Kai and Valara started to blur, their individual consciousness expanding to encompass both perspectives simultaneously. He could feel her heart beating in rhythm with his, could sense her emotions as clearly as his own. The physical connection deepened as their minds merged. When he kissed her, he felt both the giving and receiving of that tenderness. When she arched beneath him, he experienced both his desire and her response to it. Every touch was magnified, every sensation shared and doubled. Their lovemaking became a dance of perfect understanding. He knew exactly how to touch her because he could feel her reactions as his own. She anticipated his needs before he was even aware of them. It was intimate beyond anything he'd ever imagined possible. Not just the joining of bodies, but the complete sharing of pleasure, emotion, and soul. As they moved together, Kai felt the last barriers between them dissolve. He was Kai and Valara, simultaneously male and female, human and Syrian, separate yet unified. The sensation was overwhelming and beautiful, terrifying and perfect. When release finally claimed them both, it was with the force of two souls recognizing their completion in each other. Kai cried out, but whether it was his voice or hers he could no longer tell. For one transcendent moment they were truly one being, one consciousness experiencing perfect unity. As they lay entwined afterward, hearts gradually slowing, Kai realized that everything had changed. He could feel Valara's contentment as a warm glow in his chest, could sense her thoughts flickering at the edges of his awareness. When she turned to look at him, he saw himself reflected in her silver eyes, not just physically, but spiritually. He was part of her now just as she was part of him. "Is this how it always is?" he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. She smiled, and he felt her joy as his own. Only when souls truly recognize each other. We are bonded now. Completely, and forever. Kai pulled her closer, marveling at how right it felt to hold her. "I can feel you inside my mind, and I can feel you in mine. We are no longer two separate beings pretending to be married." Her fingers traced patterns on his chest, and he felt the love behind the gesture as clearly as her touch. We are truly one. As sleep began to claim them both, Kai realized that everything he'd feared about this arrangement had been swept away. He hadn't lost his freedom. He'd found his other half. And tomorrow they would begin to show both their peoples what was possible when love transcended the boundaries of species and prejudice. Kai awakened to sensations that were entirely new, yet felt as natural as breathing. Before he even opened his eyes, He was aware of Valara's presence in a way that went far beyond the physical. Her contentment flowed through him like warm honey, her dreams still echoing at the edges of his consciousness. When her breathing shifted from sleep to wakefulness, he felt the transition as clearly as if it were his own. "Good morning, my beloved," she whispered. And the endearment carried layers of meaning that his mind now understood without translation. In Zyrian culture, those words meant, "one who completes my soul." He turned to face her, marveling at how her silver eyes seemed to hold starlight even in the soft morning illumination. "I feel different, like I'm more than I was yesterday." "You are." She traced a finger along his jaw, and he felt her wonder at their connection alongside his own. "We both are." The bonding doesn't just join two people. It creates something new, something greater than the sum of its parts. As they lay together, Kai became aware of the full extent of their connection. He could sense her emotions as clearly as his own, feel her thoughts brushing against his mind like gentle whispers. But more than that, he found himself understanding concepts that should have been alien to him. Zyrian cultural nuances, strategic thinking patterns, even fragments of their ancient language flowing through his consciousness. "The war," he said, suddenly, sitting up as a flood of new understanding washed over him. "I can see it from both perspectives now. The fear on both sides, the miscommunications that escalated into violence, the way each attack fed the cycle of retaliation." Valara sat up beside him, her expression serious. "Now you understand why the bonding was necessary, not just for peace between our peoples, but for true understanding. How can species learn to coexist when they cannot truly comprehend each other's perspectives? But we can now." The implications began to dawn on him. "We're like translators, not just of language but of thought, emotion, culture itself. More than translators." She rose from the bed with fluid grace, moving to the viewport that showed the space station bustling with activity. Both human and Zyrian ships moved in carefully coordinated patterns, maintaining the fragile peace. "We are bridges, living proof that the barriers between our species are not insurmountable." A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Admiral Morrison's voice filled the room with barely contained excitement. "Captain Thorne, Princess Valara, I hope I'm not disturbing anything important, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Kai exchanged a look with Valara, both of them instantly understanding what the other was thinking. Their new connection allowed for communication without words. "What kind of situation, Admiral?" "A miracle, frankly. Our negotiation teams have been working through the night on the detailed peace accords, and something unprecedented has happened. The Zyrian delegates are reporting that they can suddenly understand human emotional and cultural contexts in ways they never could before. Meanwhile, our human diplomats say they're gaining insights into Zyrian thought patterns that are revolutionizing their approach." Valara moved closer to the communication device, her silver eyes bright with understanding. "Admiral, are the negotiators who are experiencing these changes the ones who were present during our bonding ceremony yesterday?" "Why, yes, actually." "How did you know?" Kai felt a surge of excitement that he wasn't sure was his or Valara's, or perhaps both. "The bonding effect is expanding. Our connection is creating a field of enhanced understanding that's affecting others around us." "What does that mean exactly?" Morrison's voice carried a mixture of fascination and concern. Valara's hand found Kai's, their fingers intertwining, as she spoke. "It means that what happened between us last night was just the beginning. Our bonded consciousness is generating a resonance that allows others to experience cross-species empathy and understanding. The more time people spend around us, the more they'll be able to truly comprehend each other across species lines." The communication device crackled with Morrison's stunned silence before he spoke again. "Are you telling me that your marriage has somehow created a psychic field that promotes interspecies understanding?" "Not psychic," Kai corrected, the knowledge flowing from Valara's consciousness into his own understanding. "Consciousness resonance. Among Valara's people, bonded pairs sometimes develop this ability, but it's extremely rare. The fact that it's manifesting between human and Zirian suggests that our species are more compatible than anyone imagined, Valara finished. We are not just two different forms of life learning to coexist. We are two halves of a greater whole, separated by space and time but always meant to reunite. Over the following hours, as word of the enhanced negotiations spread, representatives from both species requested audiences with the newly bonded pair. Kai and Valara found themselves at the center of a transformation that neither side had anticipated. Military commanders who had spent years viewing each other as incomprehensible enemies began finding common ground. Diplomats who had struggled with cultural misunderstandings suddenly discovered nuanced solutions to seemingly impossible problems. In the grand conference hall where the final peace accords were being drafted, Kai and Valara stood before the assembled representatives of both empires. The human delegation sat on one side, the Zirian on the other, but the rigid separation that had defined their interactions for years was already beginning to soften. 3 days ago, Kai began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space, I thought I was being sacrificed for political expedience. I believed I was trading my freedom for the promise of peace. I thought I was choosing duty over personal happiness, Valara continued, her words weaving seamlessly with his. I believed I was accepting a marriage of convenience to save my people from annihilation. We were both wrong, they said in unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that sent ripples of emotion through the gathered audience. Kai stepped forward, addressing the human delegation. Through the bonding, I have experienced Zirian culture not as an outsider studying data, but as one who has lived it. I have felt their deep connection to artistic expression, their reverence for life in all its forms, their genuine confusion and horror when our first conflicts began. They are not the calculating conquerors we believed them to be. They are explorers and builders who stumbled into war through miscommunication and fear. Valara turned to her own people, her silver eyes reflecting the love and certainty that Kai could feel flowing through their bond. And I have experienced human determination, ingenuity, and capacity for both fierce protection and deep compassion. The humans are not the destroyers we feared. They are guardians of their communities and families, willing to fight with desperate courage when threatened, but equally willing to show mercy to defeated enemies. What we offer you now, Kai continued, is not just peace but understanding. True understanding that comes from seeing through each other's eyes, feeling with each other's hearts. The bonding effect will spread, Valara added, not through force or artificial means but through choice. As more humans and Zirians work together, live together, form friendships and partnerships, the barriers between our species will continue to dissolve. Admiral Morrison stood, his weathered face showing an emotion Kai had never seen there before, hope mixed with awe. Are you saying that this marriage will somehow transform both our civilizations? We are saying, Valara replied, her hand, finding Kai's as their unified consciousness pulsed with shared certainty, that this marriage has revealed what was always possible. Humans and Zirians are not separate species struggling to coexist. We are two expressions of the same universal drive toward consciousness, connection, and love. The silence that followed was profound, broken finally by a Zirian elder who rose with tears streaming down her blue-tinged cheeks. In all our histories, all our sacred texts, we have stories of the time when souls were divided across the stars, waiting to be reunited. Perhaps those stories were not mythology after all. As the day progressed and the final peace accords were signed, Kai and Valara stood together, no longer reluctant participants in a political arrangement, but partners in the truest sense. They had not just ended a war, they had begun a new chapter in the evolution of consciousness itself. No regrets? Valara whispered as they watched the celebration beginning around them. Kai pulled her close, feeling their bonded souls resonate with perfect harmony. Only that we waited so long to find each other. We found each other exactly when we were meant to, she replied, and in her words he heard the echo of ancient wisdom, the promise of infinite tomorrows, and the unshakable certainty that some connections transcend species, space, and time itself. As the stars wheeled overhead and two civilizations began the long journey toward unity, their love became the foundation upon which a new future would be built.